Everyone, welcome to Never 9 to 5. I have my main man here, Lorenzo Fields. You've seen this on YouTube, more than likely, and on whatever the fuck I'm putting this podcast on. So let's just get into it. Lorenzo is an entrepreneur. Tell everyone, what path? There's like tons of different avenues when it comes to entrepreneurship, but like what are you trying to accomplish and what are you trying to do?
Yeah, so I mean, my main thing is that I really want to, help people understand, I guess, certain tools, certain perspectives, certain ways that they can really change their life on a day-to-day basis, how they do anything, whether it comes to, fitness or mindset, and really kind of these life hacks that I've kind of found for myself have really changed, my life. And really it's just kind of getting people to that next step, of where they're trying to go and how to get there and getting rid of any, blocks that are in the way of that. So, a lot of people probably put me in the block of, personal development. And, kind of within that, I'm trying to do something a little bit different. Because there's, a lot of motivational information inside of personal development. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of, people trying to say, okay, think positive, or, the secret law of attraction. Like, if you think about what you want, you're going to get there. And, that's one side of the coin. But there's a lot of, deeper aspects to that, those roads will lead you to another roadblock, because you get to this point where it's like, oh, well, I've been thinking really positive thoughts, and for some reason I haven't gotten here yet. You know what I mean? I've been really thinking about this thing, and it hasn't, manifested for me.
Right.
And so just trying to really, I guess, innovate within that space with some of the things that I've found that have kind of moved the needle for me and really have made it's not so much even just an improvement in my life. It's completely changed the context of my day-to-day life,
Okay.
And so I want to do that for other people and completely change the context of their lives and how they view life and, I guess, their perspective of the world. I want to pull them out of the matrix.
Oh, yeah. No, I like that. Would you say, and I'm not going to fit you into this box because me and you have had conversations on this plenty of times before, but for the people looking and listening, you are your own man, you are your own entrepreneur, but when I refer you to Anthony Robbins or Tony Robbins, would you say that is kind of the person that you, not saying that you were going to be, but on that level of what he's trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think also when you kind of talk about it at that level too, Tony has really influenced a lot of people's lives, and I really want to have the same level of impact and influence, on people that he's had. He's definitely an inspiration for me, but I guess with a little bit of a different flavor.
For sure.
and a different audience for that matter. Obviously, Tony's been in the game for a long time, and he has a very large appeal towards people 30 plus. You know what I mean? And I kind of want to help a lot of the younger generation, because these are the people coming into the world, and my experience, with the whole reason why I wanted to create this in the first place is that I realized, that these were things that I felt I should have known all my life, things
absolutely.
that I feel like I was kind of cheated out of almost, that if I had known this, if I had understood this at an earlier age, I'd be so far ahead of where I am right now.
Absolutely.
And the whole world would be so far ahead of where it is right now if we all understood, these certain ideas or principles in our lives.
So what would you say are certain ideas and principles that you feel would benefit that has not only benefited yourself, but has also what should also benefit all of mankind?
Yeah.
Name me three that you feel would be
I'd say a foundational one, and this kind of is really the foundation for everything. I think this is the number one principle I think that could change everyone's life, and that's that the map is not the territory. Understanding the difference between how you understand the world is different from what the world really is, and that really these maps are just different ways in which we can navigate the world to a certain level of effectiveness. And sometimes even using different maps for different situations can be more beneficial for you. And I guess kind of leading into another one of those principles would be that you can use everything as a strategy more so than taking it personal to yourself.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when people are looking at things like personal growth and trying to look at personal development, they're thinking about it in the context of like, oh, I'm having to change who I am.
Right.
And no one wants to, change who they are. They want to be authentic. And it's really more the context that, no, you're not changing who you are or what you want. You're changing the context, the strategy that you're using to achieve that, right?
Yes.
So
you're still who you are, but like you're just like becoming that next version of you.
Yeah, it's there's these things that we think that those things are who we are. We essentially identify with them, and we say, oh, this is who I am. Like, I can't change that. This is me. Yeah. And really what you're referring to is more of a strategy that you've used to fulfill a part of who you are. It's just that strategy isn't always the best way to actually get what you are looking for.
For sure.
And so it's more about developing these kind of other strategies. I like Gary Vee always uses the phrase deploy gratitude, and I like that he does that, because when you think of deploy, you're like almost thinking like deploy a missile. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a strategic tactical strike. You know what I mean? You are launching gratitude. And a lot of people would assume that, if I was... It'd be one thing for me to say deploy gratitude, and another one for me to say be a grateful person, right? Because it's like, well, what if I don't feel like I am a grateful person? You know what I mean? Now you're asking me to change who I am. It's a part of my identity, you know what I mean? And more so, it's that you can actually use gratitude. You have to understand that it's going to benefit you as who you are and what you want and who you want to be, what you want to achieve in the long run. And that gratitude is just one of the better strategies to getting there.
Yeah.
So.
And not only that, but like that also speaks to like having high having emotional and social intelligence to understand not only having gratitude and deploying it, as you just said, to help further what you're trying to do, but to also understand that like it's strategic in how when to deploy gratitude and when not to deploy gratitude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a strategy at which you don't always have to be doing the same things in all contexts, and there's different ways of looking at the world, even from almost a metaphorical standpoint, that will help you to essentially achieve things at a better level. Even something as simple as taking something that you are really good at, something that you've done before, something you've been successful at, and then using those same ideas towards something else that you're trying to get better at. So it's like, oh, you don't have to change who you are. In fact, let's take a piece of who you are and transfer that over to something new that you're doing again, you know what I mean? And you can essentially transfer a skill set that you've already developed. So you're actually being more resourceful. You're using resources you already have and then taking those and putting them into whatever you're trying to work on now.
And I like that, and I agree with it. And I think that like a big problem with like people in general, just stating we're not still even on the first benefit one, is like just is the fact that we get so hung up on like what we have to do or what we need to do that we forget that we're we forget to be resourceful. We forget to be reflexive, to like just to be flexible in any situation. A lot of people are very black. Not many people, but a great deal of people are very black and white and very not very relative to any of the situations. They don't think about like, oh, I could be doing this or I could be doing that, or I could be doing this in this kind of way or that in this kind of way, and so on and so forth. It's very much, well, this is all I know how to do, and I'm just going to do it that way.
Yeah.
Which is dangerous.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I agree with that mindset. What would you say are like the other two benefits that Gary Vee had talked about? That you were talking about earlier.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think one of the things we were talking about earlier was that, Gary Vee is very straightforward. He is always trying to find kind of the quickest way to essentially solve a problem. And that's one of the things I really like about him. And one of the things he was talking about is that, things can be more binary, which... we were talking about how that kind of is relative to the situation, right? There's certain situations where maybe when you get to a certain point, things become more binary. And so that's a good example of a map, right?
Yeah.
So someone might hold the map in their mind that everything is binary at all times.
Yeah.
And so that strategy serves them, but only up to a point. right? So again, you can strategically use these maps when they are applicable to your situation or when they are useful, really.
Yeah.
And that's another one of those things that kind of comes into play, is kind of looking at truth more from a perspective of, is this useful for you?
Yeah.
And not so much, is it true, because there's a level at which you will never know the entirety of truth here,
Yeah.
You'll never know someone to the fullest extent, you'll never know anything to the entirety of what it is. And so within that is kind of an acceptance of what is a useful way to view this that allows me to navigate my reality in a way that's actually useful or beneficial for me.
Yeah. Word. Excellent. I like that. Tell me, what are some... Why have you gone on the path that you're on when it comes to this version of entrepreneurship? What's gotten you to the, I'm going to help break down your mind and really help you become the next version of you?
Yeah, I think it kind of all started growing up in a very kind of strict religious household. So I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, and I had all these kind of rules and ideas and beliefs about the world that were kind of given to me. And it wasn't until I began really kind of dissecting those and kind of trying to understand the degree at which those beliefs were held by me or were given to me,
right.
that I was really able to understand who I was, because when we have all these rules and these ideas and these thoughts about who we're supposed to be and what the world's supposed to be like and how everything works around us, it limits us to the true experience of life, because that idea, that belief, that concept begins to cloud your experience.
Right.
And this is why it's really good for these kind of maps of the world, these kind of strategies to become modular, where you can take one out and replace it, with another one. Because again, these ideas, if you're not using them all the time, if you're not looking at them as a lens of the world, you can see the world more clearly and more openly and actually experience what the world is giving you as feedback. And that's when you're really experiencing something that's true. That's the closest thing to truth you have, is really your own experience of something, and not these ideas and concepts and beliefs about what that is, but just the experience, the true raw experience of it.
Right.
And so I think, me kind of having that, realization at a really early age, and then that paired with the fact that being in that religion, I was kind of already, from as long as I can remember back, trying to provide people with information that I thought would change their lives.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That I wanted to save people. I wanted to provide people with information that I thought would take them to the next level in life.
Yeah.
And so I think that essence of who I grew up as, that part of it has still carried with me. I've still had that drive to want to help people with any information that I think could change their lives. And so that's really been kind of a big part of me for a long time, and that's really just transferred from one area to another. Eventually I started trying to look into what is truth, and that's kind of the next step, is if everything I believed up to this point isn't true, or at least isn't something that I have understood as truth, I've just accepted, then how do I understand what is true? How do I even prove that what I've believed for so long is correct?
Right. How do you know what you know is correct?
Yeah. What is the gauge for that? And so I started looking into fallacies and kind of these cognitive biases that we have, and began understanding why certain things appeal to us and why we might believe something kind of blindly. And, one of these things is presuppositions. So presuppositions are a good example of a map, because essentially what a presupposition is it's an assumption that something is true. It is providing a context for the conversation. So assuming that X thing is true, we can then have a conversation regarding, what might make sense within that context,
within the realm of X.
Yeah. Assuming that our mutual friend went to a party last night, we can then have a conversation about what possibly went on at that party, right? So these presuppositions give us more context to our, reality and why we believe things that we believe. And then it became more trying to understand the presuppositions and if those are even true. And so it really kind of created this world-shattering effect for me, where I began kind of seeing that there were all these things that we just chose to believe, and those beliefs led to essentially foundations to prove other beliefs, but we've never even proven the first one, so a lot of what it comes down to is removing these limiting beliefs, removing these limiting patterns, and creating a foundation for people to find out what's going to be useful for them in their lives, what works.
Interesting. And like, what would you say, how long would you say that time went from having that, that mind-blowing experience and realization to you thinking like, okay, cool, because what I got from that, what I got from what you just said is that like, you've always wanted to like help people regardless. You just didn't, like, your just way of going about it was just different because one was based heavily into your religious background, and then you had that experience. And you're like, all right, so how can I, assist people? But I don't have this base. So you're like almost breaking down, and you're having to relearn everything in a sense of like what you feel would be beneficial for other people to know within their own lives.
Yeah, and I think, it was a very long road. I think, I didn't really even start thinking about it in the way I do now until probably the last 3 to 5 years, of even thinking about entrepreneurship itself, Initially, when it moved from religion, it was more just helping people understand, logic and essentially like philosophy, how to think. Essentially, was more of my idea about creating some change in the world. Yeah. And then that shifted more towards science, because science is very empirical, right? And we use it every day. It's ingrained into our daily lives. And, that shifted into me actually wanting to be like an engineer. And essentially I wanted to, create more just general change in the world that could improve someone's life, kind of be like an Elon Musk of sorts. And I guess kind of what shifted that was more of the understanding that a lot of what was important to me was more internal than it was external. So it didn't matter if I created this big revolutionary, event and change in humankind, because if their minds weren't there, it wouldn't matter, A lot of people have some of the best lives that we've ever seen, from an external perspective, from an outside view, they have everything they could ever want.
Sure,
but inside, it's chaos, it's turmoil, it's, we've had so many celebrities that, you'd look at them every day and be like, oh, I would love to be, that guy.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you find out that person's been depressed or worse, they've taken their life at some point, and that's happened very
Facts.
recently.
Yeah, everyone is fighting a battle that everyone else has no idea about, and that's a good point, because a lot of like entrepreneurs or a lot of people that just want to flex on people on social media or YouTube, or I guess that's technically social media. Yeah. But like they just they're showing their Lambos and they're coming off private jets and they have like their duffels of bag and all this other shit, and like even like with like the YouTube ads that you get, if you are in the entrepreneurship community, like you'll just see like, hey, I'm blah blah blah, and I did this thing and my life was blah 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 X, Y, and Z, and I was able to turn that around with this one little thing to turn it into ABC and whatnot. And not saying that none of that is real and not everyone has their own like origin story, but no one ever talks about like the struggles or the suffering when in entrepreneurship, like the lonely nights, the sacrificing, the fucking mental stress, the idea like you got to keep going, and you don't want to give up. It's because you don't want to give up because you're in entrepreneurship. You are doing this for a specific reason, but if you do give up, then like you feel like you like turned your back on your dreams. But if you don't give up on like you know what I mean? I'm talking a lot, but like I'm basically trying to say that like if you stick with your 9 to 5, if for those who do not want to be in a 9 to 5, then you got to keep going, and you're going to keep going through the suffering until you finally make it, and who knows when that will be. Yeah. But if you don't do it, then you'll always have that cavity in your heart of like, what if? Yeah.
And I think that within the realm of entrepreneurship, it kind of comes back to Gary Vee actually talks about this a lot, understanding yourself and self-awareness. And that's another big, foundation for a lot of the work that I've had to do is really understand self-awareness and who am I? Who 100%. Is a person? What is your identity?
Yes.
And so that's a lot of the work I've done as well, and a big part of what I want to share with the world. He talks about, deploying self-awareness. Again, that's another thing that you can deploy. It's a strategy.
Yeah.
And so I think with entrepreneurs in particular, it comes back down to have your ideas of what a good life is been given to you. Yes. Or are they yours,
Yeah.
And so I think that where those things come into play, with those lonely entrepreneurs that have, the Lambo and the penthouse and, everything that they've been told is, what makes a good life is that's just it. They've been told that.
Yeah.
And they themselves haven't, really believed that at a core level. That's not who they are,
100%, yeah.
And it's like when you understand what's coming from you and what's coming from the outside world, that completely shifts your decisions. There are people that have better lives, working for a company, and Gary Vee talks about, being the number two, you know what I mean? And understanding that, are you, an entrepreneur or maybe an intrapreneur, or are you an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur at the same time? You know what I mean? What is your path? What makes sense for you and your life? And what do you even want your life to look like? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because some people, they're like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur because of the it sounds nice. On paper, it gives them a sense of higher status, right?
Yeah.
And that only lasts so long. You only carry that essence of like, I'm an entrepreneur, and that's like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you like the idea of it, but you're not willing to put in the fucking work to be an entrepreneur. A lot of people don't know what it takes to be working like your 8 hours at a job and then putting in an extra 5 hours afterward.
Yeah.
And working weekends and like not going to parties and not doing this and keeping up with other people because like no one wants to talk about that. Everyone likes the glamorization. Now that's not to say that like people with Lambos and shit aren't living their best life. Let's be real about that. Sure. There's a lot of people out there that are just like, hey, I'm like fucking X 20 years old or whatever, and I'm like flying around in a private jet. I made it. We're not shitting on that, but we are definitely saying that human beings are complex beings, and like though we may be like they could be doing well in all aspects, some of them sure, but definitely not everybody.
Yeah.
Everyone's like fighting an internal battle of some kind in like an area of a life that you are not privy to. None of us are, and that's the point of what we're trying to say. So just so people see that we are not saying that like, oh, like every single person out there is fucking, depressed, but like they're just fronting. Some of them are. Human beings are just human beings at the end of the day. But yeah, just please continue. I just wanted to make that note.
I actually kind of like that. We kind of went there because, another part of my journey has been, even though I've had a lot of these shifts and changes and, different views of the world for myself, one of the things, and this kind of gets more into the Tony Robbins world, is how do you help other people, find that in their lives? And that's something that is really unique to them.
Yes.
And so that's why I began learning more about like coaching and hypnotherapy and NLP, is because, these are different ways of trying to understand what someone's real internal personal goals are. And, beyond understanding that there's kind of these things, about the world, these principles, these underlying, ideas that can help you shift the way you look at things.
Right.
It comes back down to, okay, but what does this mean in the context of your life?
Yeah.
And so coaching and NLP and hypnotherapy have created a framework for me to essentially reach people where they're at and try to understand what their personal goals are. Where do you want to go? What is your A to B?
Don't want to cut you off, but for the people listening and watching, explain to them what NLP is.
Oh yeah, NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, and essentially the foundation of NLP is, trying to remove kind of these programs that aren't useful and replacing them with ones that are. And this comes up with hypnotherapy as well, but a lot of people think, well, I don't I don't want someone going in and messing with my brain and changing my mind.
Yeah.
And the reality of the situation is that these programs happen whether you want them to or not. That's how we become who we are. That's how we build character, right? That's how we go from being an innocent child with no concept of the world to being a full-grown adult that thinks he has it all figured out.
For sure.
You know, is that these things become programmed in us from the outside world. And this is what happens with these entrepreneurs that end up leading kind of these false success lives, really. You know what I mean? There's people that really do want, to have things, and that's what drives them. That's what motivates them. That's what they feel fulfilled by. And there's other people that really are just trying to, live a life where they have more freedom, in time. And that's when you kind of get more into like lifestyle entrepreneurship and more of like the Tim Ferrisses of the world, where it's like, I'm not in it for the game of the grind of entrepreneurship. I'm in it so that I have time freedom.
Exactly.
And so there's different types of entrepreneurs. You look at Gary Vee, on the other hand, he loves his life as well, but he doesn't, care about having, time off. Man could retire right now if he wanted to.
Yeah.
That's not his goal. He's in it for the legacy. He's in it for the game. He's in it for the journey. And so everyone's different. You look at someone like David Goggins. David Goggins willingly puts himself through stressful physical, situations, and it's not him trying to front and be like, oh, hey, like, look at me. It's that those things literally give him happiness. Like, he finds happiness knowing that he's able to do things that would make most people uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
And that nothing can stop him, that he is, like, impenetrable. And, And so I think having that anti-fragility can also be, something that gives people happiness.
Yeah.
But it comes down to more, what is that for you? Who are you? And it's kind of more about peeling off these layers that have been handed to us. We, like I said, we build up this character throughout the course of our life, and we have to figure out how much of that is really us and how much of that has been given to us from other people.
For sure. And I would I completely agree with that, because I feel like a lot of people just like the idea of like you said earlier, and this ties into everything, like you're saying, like, oh yeah, entrepreneurship, I don't know what it's going to take for me to do it. All I know is that like they have freedom, and like people have to understand that like there are many paths to freedom, whatever that looks like for you, and success for whatever that looks like for you as an individual, and that like there's a difference between time freedom, as you mentioned earlier, and lifestyle design, as you mentioned earlier. Excuse me. So like, for instance, you brought up Gary Vee, brought up Tim Ferriss, personal fan of Tim Ferriss, fucking love Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss, if this blows up, please come on to this podcast. I would love to have you on here. But like, yeah, Gary Vee, like, his mantra is hustle, 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 always hustle for whatever you want. But he also states, like, if do what makes you happy in life. Happiness is the most important thing. Happiness is not positivity, mind you guys. Happiness is, what is going to be most fulfilling to you as a human being.
It's that internal fulfillment.
For sure. And like, Gary Vee and Tim Ferriss, like, perfect examples. Gary Vee's a hustler, like, going to be hustling forever. But Gary Vee's no pushover. He's worth 9 figures himself, and he's about automation and just living his life and just like understanding life and understanding like different human beings and stuff like that. He's not. Yeah. That's not to say that Tim Ferriss doesn't hustle.
Yeah.
I'm just saying like it's not as promoted as much. Like, especially like if you read like 4-hour work week.
Yeah.
And so like I think people need to understand like time freedom. Time freedom allows you to have the time. Gives you your freedom back time-wise. You are not subject to a 9 to 5. That is time freedom.
It's the mini hustle.
Yes.
It's like okay, I'm gonna hustle in this kind of short sprint so that I can create not a marathon of running, but a marathon of living.
Exactly.
The rest of my life.
Exactly. And so that way you're not surviving life. You are living life, or even thriving in life, depending on whatever you're trying to do in life. And that's what time freedom allows. Like you find a set amount. Like that allows you a set number, whatever that is, to allow you to walk away from whatever you don't want to be doing, typically a 9 to 5, and then you are able to go and start living life. But like even then, people know that, okay, I want to achieve that, but like what do I do once I achieve that? Like you made a good point earlier. Like are you living the life that you want, or are you living the life that was presented to you from others? Like is that what you want, or is that because like me, like I personally want to travel everywhere. I wouldn't mind having a penthouse. I wouldn't mind having a Lambo. But like I want to travel and like have my son come along and like we just we just live life. You know what I mean? We just live life. We're not scrounging. We're not trying to find time. We are living life. You know what I mean? Yeah. What's that one movie? Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump, like I forget I guess the guy who runs the boat tells Forrest Gump like, hey, you know, and all your financial troubles gone. I don't remember that part, but I remember like there was a part in the movie where like Forrest Gump does not have to spend money for the rest of his life, I guess. Like he doesn't have to spend any type of money. And he's like, oh, one less thing. That's exactly what time freedom is. It gives you one less thing to worry about. One major less thing. Yeah. Money, financials. Sure. You know, so that way you're able to go and do things. And I think especially with what you were saying, which are really good points, that like people need to understand not only like that time freedom doesn't mean lifestyle by design, and lifestyle by design is your own. It's your own Minecraft. It's your own life. It's your own. It gives you the ability to make your life on your terms, which is a very fulfilling and a very dangerous thing. A very beautiful thing too, because a lot of people don't have that opportunity to do that. And the people that do, you see them being able to live however they want, if truly nothing was a limitation. In this case, money, because like you see like guys like Dan Bilzerian. This is what this man is going to be. This man has like lots of fucking money, and this is exactly what he's doing. And I'm not saying it's bad or good or anything. I'm saying this is, you know, Dan Bilzerian is living his best fucking life. Yeah. But then there's like other people, like say like Tim Ferriss. I'm just gonna bring him up again. Like he's like living a more, as far as we know, humbler life. You know, not saying that you're crazy or anything like that, Tim. I'm just saying like you know, like this is like what we see. You know, and like that's none of it's good or bad. It's just like Dan Bilzerian, since I brought him up, said like one of the best quotes I've ever heard. That life is about setup, and that's all lifestyle design is. You set up your life how you want it to be. And you're going to help them do that. Yeah.
I mean, that's a very strong part of trying to understand the context of your life is where are you right now and where do you want to go? And, you know, a lot of people, you know, just kind of go through life in this kind of monotony, and they're not really seeing, you know, the path ahead or where they are. And even then, for some people, that's okay. For some people, like, they are fine being content with where they're at and kind of being in just kind of the day-to-day of things, and that's awesome if that's who you are. But other people, you know, live in this kind of closed-in box that they don't like very much, but they think it's the only way. And it's kind of about going out of that box and saying, okay, what else is out here? You know, how do you get to where you're at? And, you know, for some people, they have these kind of blocks where it's like, oh, that's off limits. Yeah. And it's like, why? You know, like, why is it off limits? Yes. You know? And so, you know, I like, oh, man, I'm losing his name right now, but he's like the CEO of Mind Valley. Vision. Vision. Lakiani, yeah. So he has this book called Code of the Extraordinary Mind, and he talks about rules, which are bullshit rules. And you know, I really like that because that's what we create for ourselves, is kind of these bullshit rules. Yes. You know, they're not real. They're again these kind of maps, these ways, these strategies that we've used that have actually been useful for us at some point. And it's just that the use of them, the utility of them, does not stand the test of time and is not always useful for every situation that we're going to be in.
Absolutely, which goes back to what we were saying earlier, where you have to like learn to not be so black and white about things. You have to be very flexible and very relative in all situations.
Adaptable,
Very adaptable, thank you, Very adaptable to everything, because life is water. It's not stone. It's not like, oh, well, this is it. A plus B is C. It's like, no. A can be times B, and that can equal E, and like, you know, do that to the second power or whatever, you know, like it could be literally unpredictable at all times.
I talked earlier about how, you know, for a while my way of trying to understand, you know, the next step for me and what I was trying to achieve was science. And one of the things that I've kind of become a little bit more disillusioned with science is that science always looks at everything in isolation. Right. You know, everything has no variables when looking at it, because variables change, you know, and so there's no way of saying, okay, with these variables present, you know, that it's going to be the same with these other variables present. but the thing about life is that the context of life is that there's always variables. And so, science is a very good way, again, of coming to kind of an objective go-to map of the world, a thing to kind of rely on when you don't really have much else to go off of.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, better than having some blind belief,
Yeah.
But there's things that might still be useful for you outside of the realm of what's been empirically proven, and empiricism in itself is kind of funny, because one of the foundations for empiricism is actually Descartes. He kind of is the philosopher that really put empiricism into the mainstream of thought, that you could actually come to some sort of objective truth about what something is. Really before him, most of the world kind of looked at things as well, I just believe this and that's how it is. And there wasn't really an idea that there was this objective truth, or there was an objective way of getting down to something and looking beyond just what your personal beliefs were.
Yeah.
And so, it's very interesting, but the fascinating part about that is that he discovered empiricism while he was having a fever dream where an angel came to him and basically started talking to him about the concept of empiricism.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's not even his.
Well, and it's the context of it is so interesting because it's what is the empiricism of that dream, you know what I mean, and how empirical is it that you could find truth in that, that fever dream, and so it's very interesting and kind of creates this I guess kind of idea of what a lot of people go through and this kind of paradoxical nature of the world,
Yeah.
So I think that that's another big part of kind of navigating reality too. And Gary Vee also talks about this a lot. He's very intuitively smart about these things, but doesn't really talk about them outside of someone else asking him a question about it, so it's very interesting. But he even talks about one of the best skills that you can develop is the ability to hold two simultaneously seemingly opposing ideas at the same time, because you're getting more of a clearer picture of your reality that way. It's these people view it this way, these people view it this way.
Yeah.
It's there's probably a little bit of truth in both of those.
For sure, yeah,
There's
absolutely.
Probably a reason, or again, kind of a use for having that perspective that has led them to something beneficial, and this kind of comes down into this, programming that we have in our mind is kind of these reward systems, I've used this strategy, or I've had this belief and it's been rewarded in some sort of way in my life, what I mean? It's gotten me from point A to point B. It's gotten me either towards something I wanted or away from something I was trying to avoid.
So some kind of extrinsic, I can never say that word, external motivation as opposed to an internal motivation. It's something that's externally, okay, this allows me to be able to go from point A to point B. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it could be external or internal. For instance, an external example would be I need to own a car. Could be a very foundational belief. Everyone needs to own a car, right? And maybe the reason why you believe everyone needs to own a car is because there was a job you really wanted, and that job was 30 miles away from your home, and so you needed a car at the time to get from point A to point B to go to your dream job, and maybe there wasn't as good of jobs around you at that time, right? So that might have been a very useful framework for you at that time. But maybe, nowadays when we have things like Uber and kind of, a lot more of a ways of kind of having a life without transportation necessarily, you know what I mean? For instance, remote work, you know what I mean, was not as viable for, people, 50 years ago,
for sure, what I mean? Yeah.
As it is now.
I don't even think you could. Can you even do remote work?
No.
You couldn't do anything like that. Yeah.
Not that I know of, unless they were doing some weird telephone stuff.
Yeah, using some MS-DOS at home or some shit.
Maybe you're you understood a Morse code.
Yeah, you know what I mean. To just do some customer service shit at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that's another one of those things where, you know, the context of your reality can kind of shift from moment to moment, and, you know, things that might have been true for a time are not true at another. Another one could be an internal motivation. So it could be that you want love, right? And so maybe in the past, the way that you've gotten love is that you've, you know, kind of essentially been a victim, and, you know, people seeing how hurt you are it motivated them to want to show you more love, right? More appreciation. It wanted them to, they wanted to make you know that you were loved, right? So they, you know, went kind of above and beyond maybe what the normal relationship would be when you kind of went into this kind of darker place. And so what it's maybe trained you to do is to actually get love out of going to that darker place. So your brain unconsciously is associating that when you actually are sad, it's a way of receiving love.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So, like, it's like we're talking about like triggers, and we're talking about like consequences that the brain sees as potentially favorable. From those triggers, regardless of the situation. So I think like there's like a term for this, maybe not specifically for this, but like you're talking about the movement away from pain and the one step toward pleasure. So like that thing that's called like the hedonic scale, I think, the hedonic scale or something like that, like where like every human being, regardless of your faith, regardless of what you believe, we all intuitively, almost as a universal truth, I would almost say, because I don't know like everything about everybody or anything like that, but like we are always moving one step away from pain, and we are always moving one step toward pleasure of some kind. And pleasure doesn't have to be like something sensual. It can be like anything, like I'm got this, I'm playing video games or something like that. I'm playing a video game, or achieve something at my job, or travel to that country I always wanted to, or lost all that weight that I'd been holding on to, or whatever the case may be. And then in terms of pain, it would be like, I don't want to pay I got to pay this bill so that my water doesn't get cut off. That's some negative ass motivation, because you need that water. And if you don't pay that bill, there goes your water, or like, I gotta, wash my dishes because I don't want no goddamn roaches in my place. You know what I mean? Or like or like other things like making sure that you do a good job at work, or like just any kind of pain. And the pain doesn't have to be like, like bone crushing or anything. Like, it's just like literally anything that is universally negative, or negative to the subjective sense of you. Some people are like, I have no problem paying, but that's a pleasurable thing for me, or like whatever the case may be. But yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, the question comes up then, what happens when you have kind of this trigger that, if you do something pleasurable, it then equals something painful, or if you do something painful, it then equals something pleasurable, and how that might shift your behavior. And
can we get an example of that? So like one that is a pleasure that leads to something negative, and a negative that leads to something positive.
Okay, so let's take the example that we used earlier, right? Of someone maybe when they get really sad and upset, it's helped them get rewarded with love. This is actually a very foundational thing. We do this as children, right? We learn to cry in order to get the attention of our parents. If we're doing that as kids, as children, as babies, you imagine how much that carries into our adulthood.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's something foundational that we've been doing forever. The longer you do something, the more of a habit you're building up of it, and you begin kind of doing it, where you don't even notice it. There's a lot of unconscious habits. People that bite their nails. How long have you been biting your nails for?
Your whole life.
People that have, been having trouble with like overeating. A lot of people have been doing that their whole life, and it's that these habits that we build up for a long time, they become almost unconscious where we don't even realize that they're happening. And so something as simple as being sad and crying to get the attention of our parent and get love from them can get very ingrained in us. So but again, it also makes us sad, right? So there's a negative aspect to it, and a reward, which is the love. But what happens when you are putting yourself in that state, but now you're not getting the love, right?
Yeah.
So now you're continuously putting yourself in the state, wanting to get love out of the situation, but now the love's not coming. And so now you only have the pain, and you don't have the love. Yeah. So that's a situation where that strategy becomes unresourceful, and it's also not sustainable, because the people around you are needing to cater to that, instead of giving it, freely, right? And then they don't have as much time to, give it to you otherwise, right? And now it becomes more of a thing where it's like, oh, well, they almost kind of get programmed with, oh, when that person gets sad, then I can expend all this like energy and time and love with them, because it's like if I'm not doing it at those times, then I'm doing it 24/7. You know what I mean? Which can be a lot of energy to put towards one person.
True. Yeah. Facts.
So and that's why a lot of people don't feel like they actually have much of a choice, because they've kind of put themselves in this situation where they are constantly in pain, essentially, and wanting kind of this external comfort, right? This external love to come to them. And now, the resources where they would normally find love and it would actually just come to them naturally, regardless of what they were doing, is now only being available to them at times where they're in pain. So now, like, they don't even ever want to get out of that, because right. it's like, oh, well, as soon as I stop feeling this, well, like, the love's gone,
Oh, wow. And that's a very dangerous mindset to be in, because that reminds me of like those TV shows where you see people who whatchamacallit, they'll you've seen stories like this before, where people are like, oh, I have cancer, like, cancer's a terrible disease and whatnot, but people will be faking it just so they can get that kind of attention that they're looking for and whatnot.
It's worse if people believe it. Yeah. You know what I mean? They like, people will literally think that there's something wrong with them, because it gives them that internal trigger of, oh, love follows this, and they don't realize that that's there. It's not a conscious thought, at least for most people. There is some times where someone might understand that is actually a viable strategy for them to get what they want in the moment. But most of the time when this is happening, it's not something that you're actually thinking about it. It's something that it's almost like you hear people say, I don't know why I feel this way. I don't know why I'm always doing this. I don't know why this behavior is recurring and I don't feel like I can stop it. And that's because it's not conscious. They're not aware of it.
Right.
And so once you become more aware of it, you have more leverage.
Gotcha.
Now on the other end, we were talking about also something that is, maybe doing something positive that leads to something negative.
Yes.
Right? So this could be, let's say, working out, right? When you work out, you're doing something positive for yourself. You know what I mean? You're getting into a better state of fitness, but there's also pain. There's physical pain associated with that, right? And, we are kind of taught very early on that pain is bad, right?
Yes.
It's a natural protection. It's a natural defense mechanism for us to move away from pain, like you were saying, even just on the idea of that scale, that we're always trying to move away from pain. So even though we're doing something that is benefiting us for the long term, in the short term, every time we do it, we feel pain. So you might have someone that never works out for their entire life because they associate that workout with pain, So that's another example of it on the flip side.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because you also have like people that just like work out, that don't, like you said, like that just don't work out because they don't want to feel that initial pain, when in fact that pain is exactly what you need, working out wise at least, to get to that next level of whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So I mean, basically, like, these are all just like mental walls we're putting up for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give us a tip, like, of like how you would break someone out of, like, how someone can scale that mental wall. How would you begin doing that?
Yeah. There's a lot of ways. One way that will resonate with a lot of people, especially if they're very visual type people, is actually creating more of a mental framework for that, right? So let's say if you do view something as a wall, right? You could, you even hear people say like, oh, I feel like there's this giant wall, when they're trying to get somewhere, they might actually even view it that way. And so it's like, okay, well, let's say that there is this wall, what is something that you could do to break down this wall? Or is there a way that you could avoid the wall altogether to get to where you want to go? And sometimes even having that context, a lot of people, like I said, have kind of these bullshit situations in which they're actually creating like a false obstacle that's not even there. Sometimes the obstacle is there, but it's not as difficult as people think it is to overcome. But a lot of times the obstacle isn't actually even really in their way. It's just something that's there, and they're using that as a barrier, but really it could even be be a point of leverage. It could actually be something that's benefiting them. For instance, something that happens with a lot of entrepreneurs is they, maybe if they're trying to go for more of the sense of like, I guess social status of like who they are and things
Clout
like that.
And all that.
Yeah. They might have trouble, kind of with the idea that they haven't got it all figured out yet. Like my marriage is failing and I'm out of shape and blah 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 blah, and a lot of that could maybe go into something you could actually leverage towards your sense of development, right? So it could be that you had to kind of go through all these events in your life, and that's a story that like other people could resonate with, you know what I mean, and help them actually feel more in touch with you and in touch with themselves because they know that somebody else has been through what they've been through. Yeah. So, this is just an example of a leverage point that can actually seem like an obstacle for a lot of people.
Yes.
I don't have the finances, to do what I want to do. It's like, okay, well, maybe it's just a matter of getting the finances, what I mean? And that could be, that, I don't have any high income skills that are going to allow me to get that. Well, one thing is like, well, maybe you could actually borrow the money and then you use that money to leverage towards creating what you want to get you more money, right? So venture capitalism.
Yeah.
The other way of going about it could be crowdfunding. Everyone else wants you to create this thing that you want to create as well, and so you crowdfund it and get a bunch of money. We talked about the guy that crowdfunded potato salad.
Yeah, this guy. Yeah, I'm gonna say for the viewers out there, if you guys don't know, I forget his name, but like you can look it up. In 2013, this guy, he wanted to make a potato salad, and his limit was like $10. Yeah. He's only asking for like $10 or $20 to make potato salad, and like none of the things he put on. He's like, I want to make some basic ass potato salad.
Yeah.
And he ended up getting like $55,000 or $60,000.
$52,000, something crazy.
For a
like someone's salary.
And he just decided to do it, and like he wasn't even asking. Like, but the point of what I'm trying to say is like. The point of what you're trying to say, I feel, and like, or at least works towards your point, is that like people don't try because they stop themselves before they even like have had the ability to try.
Yeah, and I talked about this in a video recently. There's a wonderful book called Reality Transurfing, which I had a very strange experience with, there's this concept within the book about choice and control.
Yes.
And there's a difference between control and choice. And a lot of people, this is one of the things that people tend to latch onto is this control, this sense that if I can control the world around me, then I don't have to, worry about anything because I'm in control, right?
Yes.
But there are things that you're not in control of. And so one of the things to understand is, you can actually replace control with choice and your ability to choose. And this is actually a better, quality to have because you are able to have more of a resourcefulness, again, to really navigate your world in a way that goes beyond the external factors around you, right? So it's actually more powerful than control because it doesn't rely on anything outside of you. You always have choice.
Yeah.
And that could be choice from more of a, external perspective of, do I choose Pepsi or Coke?
Yeah.
Or it could be a choice more internally of, how do I choose to view this situation? How do I choose to react to this situation?
Yes.
How do I choose to feel in spite of this situation?
Yes.
And so that's the big difference between choice and control. And so what a lot of people don't do is they don't choose what they want in life. There's this thing that they really want to go after and this thing that they've always wanted, and they don't choose to go after it because they don't think they can control the outcome of it.
Yes.
So they're thinking, that will never happen, so they don't even choose to go down the path that would actually get them there because they're so obsessed with controlling. Like it's the same thing with people being obsessed with being right. You know what I mean? It's like, I need to be correct about this. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to go after this thing because if I do it and it doesn't work out, then I was wrong.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, the only way you're actually going to get there ever, and the only way that anyone gets anywhere to that point is choosing it,
Yes.
And I know you always say, fortune favors the bold.
Fortune favors the motherfucking bold. Remember that, everyone.
Yes.
If anything, if you don't take anything away from this podcast, remember that fortune favors the bold.
Fortune definitely favors the bold, and the reason why is because the bold always choose.
Yes.
They always choose. They don't always have control. right? But they always choose, and that's what actually allows them to have control in the first place, is that they then get the resources to have control because they've already chosen the path.
Exactly.
You know? And it's like, you know, there is no guarantee that if you go down a certain road that it's going to get you or lead you where you want to go. Sometimes it's something better. You know what I mean? Sometimes, like, you set a 5-year goal and you go down that road, and by year 2 you've set another 10-year goal. You know what I mean? That's completely different from where you thought you were going.
100%.
You know, like, even for me, like, I was like, oh, like, I want to be an engineer. You know what I mean? And like, that could have been, you know, like, I could have gone down the Elon Musk route, and that could have been like, and now I'm in a completely different trajectory.
Yeah.
But it's like, I still chose to go down that road, and that road led me somewhere else.
And I would still argue to say that you still are an engineer. You're just a social engineer. You're a mental and a social engineer.
Yeah, conscious engineering.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly.
Sadhguru uses that terminology. he calls it consciousness engineering.
Yeah.
And that's actually also a popular Mindvalley term too.
Yeah. So, shout out to Mindvalley.
Shout out to Mindvalley.
Shout out to GT Dave, Kombucha. Shout out to Cartel, because that's where we're at right now. We're at the Cartel coffee shop in Tempe.
GT's Kombucha.
It definitely, I have no idea if it would be. You guys just look up GT Dave. You'll know. Look up Cody Co. Shout out to Cody Co.
Shout out to Cody Co.
Yeah, and look up GT Dave.
GT Dave.
And you'll understand why we just shouted out kombucha. Anyway, but yeah, like, you're absolutely right. Or at least I would completely agree with you in the sense that, like, I feel like people need to learn to be adaptable and resourceful. And like, if you understand, to me, like, the way I interpret what you were saying is, like, if people think of things as problems, right? And if they visualize it as a problem, then they're like, okay, cool. It's a problem. I can't deal with this. I can't do it in some way, shape, or form or fashion, right? Yeah. They may not call it that, but like, if you look at things as an obstacle, then you can get past that. You can scale an obstacle. For instance, there's this woman. I forget her name, and I don't want to butcher it, but she's. I'll probably link it in the description below so you can find her. I'm so sorry, but she was an untouchable from what I know in the Indian caste system, which is like the lowest of the lowest that you could possibly be. And she became a multimillionaire, if not billionaire, and she was a female untouchable, which is like, you are as low as you could possibly be in that particular caste system. But she didn't see her things as problems. She just did what she had to do to get out of that situation. And now that she's on the same level as the elites in India right now, which is such a dope ass story. I will definitely, please look in the description. Yeah. I'll put a link to her thing in there so you could know who I'm talking about. I forget her name, and I'm so sorry. But yeah, like, everything is choices, and people, like we were just saying earlier, everything. A lot of people see things as black and white. They don't see, like, all the variety of things they can do, even like things outside of that situation. Like, I don't want to like surmise that life is like chess, but in chess you're able to see like all the different like opportunities that you can pursue, and I don't mean that from like an advantageous, like a take advantage of the situation. I mean, you are, but like not like in a malice in a sense of the word, just like in a like any kind of sense of the word. Like, entrepreneurs in general. You have to be resourceful and adaptable. You have to be like that as a human being, in my opinion. Like, like, regardless of anything else. Like, fundamentally, you need to be adaptable and resourceful. Like, you always see those movies where like somebody's like trying to plan something. Like, oh man, we want, like, you seen like those bullshit like high school movies back in the 90s, and they want to oh, we gotta like have a car wash by like by this time, otherwise we're gonna lose the frat house, or I don't know, like some bullshit like ridiculous scenario, and they always think of something. And yes, those are movies, I know, but like that shit happens in real life all the time. There are people that like take situations and find something outside of that complete situation to fix that situation, or on a grander scale or on a minor scale or anything. Like, oh, this person has these things, and I could have used that for this, for X, like, because like not everything is not going to be X plus X, Y, and Z. Sometimes X, Y, and then P, and then you got to add in an element of E and R, and that then it eventually becomes Z. You know that, and with entrepreneurship, any of you entrepreneurs out there listening, you know for a fucking fact that it's always going to be it's not going to be clear cut. Nothing ever is. You got to be able to know how to, like, you have to wear multiple hats, which is another form of adaptability, another form of resourcefulness, because you have to understand all the different elements of whatever you're trying to do, whether it be run a business, or if you're in some kind of MLM, or if you're, whatever the case may be. Like, you have to be able to, like, get through any and all kinds of scenarios. So, like, like we were saying, like I think like being resourceful being adaptable is so key to being a human being.
Oh, yeah.
But it's especially key if you want to be an entrepreneur, which is why there's no guidebook on entrepreneurship. There are books on the subject of entrepreneurship, but this is not like a job where you can just like, okay, cool, I'll just go to school and then I'll learn all these things and then I can just do that. Fuck no, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people would be doing that, but that's not it. You have to like learn, if I'm a brick and mortar store, you have to understand zoning, you have to understand how to market, you have to understand overhead, you have to understand logistics, you have to understand supply, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you have to like understand all those things. And even if that's not the case, like if it's like digital products, you have to understand like how do you make those, or if you want to make an app, you have to like understand like certain aspects of it. And I say you have to understand that because you don't want to go to a developer and then he fucks you because you don't understand what the hell you're talking about. You have to take it upon yourself to know that. You have to do that. You can't trust anybody. It's trust, but verify. And I'm not trying to say that from a very negative sense, but I'm just saying like it would only behoove you to understand such things. So that way you could progress onto the life that you want.
For sure. Yeah. I think when it comes to kind of these like different like entrepreneurial ventures as well, you even brought out like, hey, there's all these different aspects and things like that you have to understand, and you kind of have to be willing to change and adapt to that. And I think like part of that also is, a way of navigating to where you want to go. Because, again, if you have kind of this limiting idea, like I've talked to people that like are like, oh, I don't want to be like, entrepreneur because I don't want to spend like the next 60 of my years of my life slaving away. And then I'm like, Tim Ferriss is, so it's one of those things where, a lot of people have these like ideas and beliefs and, concepts of like, this is the only way you can go about it. This is the only way you can do this is that I have to be an Elon Musk, or I have to be Mark Zuckerberg, or I have to be Gary Vee, in order to get to the path.
Yeah, and that's not the case at all.
Like, and on the other flip side of that, I've even heard of, there's a video, and I think there's actually a lot of videos out there like this, but there's this one I watched called the 4-Hour Work Week Ruined My Life. And basically it's this girl who essentially, took the actual advice from the 4-Hour Work Week and built her essentially nomadic lifestyle, and escaped the 9-to-5. Was essentially like sitting on a beach and going surfing every day, hanging out with her friends, everything like that. And she actually got extremely depressed because what she was missing from the context of that was that there was a lack of fulfillment in her life. There was something that she wanted to do, that she wanted to pursue something like greater beyond that. And she was only being like hedonistic at this point, in the sense of just kind of going about her day-to-day like life freedoms, And so, what it really came down to is that she needed to leverage that freedom towards creating more meaning and purpose in her life and doing something that she cared about. And so, there's dangers on both sides. You know what
absolutely.
I mean?
And I didn't want to cut you off, but I just wanted to say, like, that harkens back to what we were saying earlier. Like, everything about entrepreneurship is not fucking sunshine and roses. Like, there are definitely negatives, like, as if you were saying, like you're just saying, like, right now, like, just saying, like, you can, now you have all the freedom in the world. Now, what about all your friends who are still working a 9-to-5?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They can't come with you because you're not up there. Because you are up there. They're not up there with you. You know what I mean? So like you're out there by yourself. What are you going to do? Like, and that comes down to the whole choices again. You can make new entrepreneurial friends. You could help your other friends, or find the ones who are interested in getting out of that if they want to. And there's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with working a 9-to-5 or anything like that. But you have to understand that if you want to be an entrepreneur and all of your friends are still in a 9-to-5 and they have no desire to escape that, then you have to understand that if you ever want to kick it with them, or you can't just go to Bali anytime. They can't come with you to Bali or Maldives or anything like that at will. You would be able to.
Yeah, and that all comes back to self-awareness.
Yes.
It all comes back to being more aware of who you are and not being fooled by all these ideas of who you're supposed to be and what life's supposed to look like, and kind of these, external values that have been handed to you, and understanding, okay, if I'm doing this, this is what my life will look like, and am I happy with that? Do I accept that? And so, that can even be just a powerful exercise. Take the life path that you're on right now and then expand that out 20 years into the future, you know what I mean? Either to the point of where you think that thing is going to get you, or, if it's something where it is a continuous path that is ongoing and doesn't stop,
yes.
Are you still happy 20 years from now doing the same thing?
100%.
Or, if this road takes you somewhere else, okay, you're there, you have the end result of, that lifestyle after 20 years of this life that you've already been on. Are you actually content with where you're at that point, you know what I mean? And so that's really, where, you can deploy self-awareness,
100%. And I think that also another big thing, and we talk about this all the time, but one of the things that I always bring up is the understanding, especially since it's the biggest theme of what we've talked about so far, is that you are the main character of your own story. Yes. You can't if you're looking to others you could look to others for say role models, or you could look to others for mentors, or even modeling after okay, cool, I want to emulate this, or if that's your thing, cool, do it. But don't think that person knows the answers, because we are all on the same fucking floating spaceship.
Oh yeah.
Hurtling to God knows where, all at the same time.
That's real, actually. That's how the world works.
That's how the world is. I mean, the Earth is. I mean, okay. Honestly,
that's actually a foundational. No.
I'm just saying, because essentially we are all. We're just on the Earth, and it's just hurtling through space. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But all I'm trying to say is that we're all born. You were born by yourself. You were born. Your parent or somebody birthed you. Sure. Yeah. You came out of someone, but you came out. You came out alone. You were going back alone. You know what I mean? You have to understand that you have to understand that self-awareness, as you were stating, is so key to being able to understanding what you want, the values or lack thereof that are for you, morals or lack thereof, ethics and lack thereof of who you are, because we're all human beings, and not everyone is going to be a good person, not everyone's going to be a bad person. It's just we're just unpredictable meatbags,
yeah.
And so it's very important, just so you understand who you are and the things that you, as a human being, want, what you want out of life.
Yeah.
And and it's not just for entrepreneurship. A lot of things that we're talking about is just basically life things as well. Regardless of your belief or anything like that, you still have to be self-aware, whether you are part of a religion or whether you lack an ethic code or whatever the case may be. You still have to know who you are and the things that you want and how to achieve those. And I'm not I'm not advocating for people to have terrible, morals and shit like that. I'm just saying that it's just facts that human beings are just human beings.
Yeah. I mean, that's another really great point about human beings, is that we've always been malleable. Who we are at different stages of our lives has changed completely.
100%.
Right? There's points where we were very much focused on survival and economics and resources, and that was the entire foundation of our society. And now we're elevated almost on this, Maslow's hierarchy of needs towards, self-fulfillment and higher purpose.
Yes.
And as we continue, moving up that hierarchy of needs, the context of our lives changes, and this is why it's so important for us to not rely on, somebody else's model of the world.
Yes.
And understanding of how things work, because the context of what our values are within a certain society, within our lifetime, is always changing, as we develop as a species, as a people. There's times where a lot of the things that we think are atrocious now were common practice.
Yeah, 100%.
Me and you talk about this all the time.
For hundreds of years, you know what I mean? Or even just other things that were just even the way that we do things these days would be different. For instance, marriage, for instance, not to go too off tangent, but marriage was for thousands of years, I would say, just a business practice.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I have these cows and you have a daughter. Cool. I have a son. Pair them up. Bam. Dowry, cows. For thousands of years. And it wasn't until relatively recently, say in the last 160, 80 years, until Queen Victoria romanticized the idea of marriages, changing our ideas of what a marriage is or should look like. And then with the advent of marketing for diamonds, the diamond marketing plan, that diamonds are forever, diamond is a girl's best friend, back in I believe the 20s and the 30s or whatever. It's a huge marketing campaign, which is why everyone wants a diamond for their wedding and whatnot. Anyway, but the point of what I'm trying to say, of what I'm saying, to go back to that is just like shit changes all the time, and like our ideals for everything changes all the time. Like there could be things now that we're doing where people in the future be like, oh my god, I can't believe they thought that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Somebody, radical.
Seriously, somebody could be like looking back in the past and be like, he's wearing his hat backwards. Are you serious? Like, well, that's so.
Can't believe he did it. He's probably a serial killer.
Yeah, you know what I mean? like seriously, like we won't know. Like who knows?
Yeah.
But like it's just like the zeitgeist of where we're at. Like the current times of like just how things are. It's just what life is at this current given time at any given time, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's valuable to be connected with that. Earlier you asked me like 3 principles, you know, like really like 3, I guess, like principles or values that you can have or qualities that you can have is that you need to be resourceful,
yes.
you need to be adaptable, and you need to be connected, right? If you are, you know, resourceful, that allows you to leverage what's around you. And being adaptable will allow you to actually, you know, kind of frame those situations differently. So now not only do you have the ability to utilize the resources around you, but you could even maybe change those resources. You know what I mean? You can actually get out of maybe your current environment and put yourself in a new place where you can now leverage those new resources in a different way. And then you can be connected, essentially being more in tune with the world around you, and that can essentially leverage itself towards that resourcefulness, towards that adaptability, and allow you to have more context for, you know, what that means within the environment that you're in. And so, you know, those are, you know, 3 very foundational qualities or principles that people can really leverage in their lives at all times. You know, so you can even check in with yourself. Am I being resourceful? You know, is this a resourceful thought or is this limiting? You know,
yes.
You know, if I'm thinking like, oh, there's no way to get to here, is it resourceful for you to think that, or is it limiting?
Right.
How good of a strategy is it for you to not think that you can get to the place you are, or for you to think of ways to get to that place? You know, and that's like something that I've even had to get like a mental shift with. You know, I was thinking about something, I was like, oh, is this thing good enough? You know, I was looking at like a product and I was thinking, is this thing good enough? And then I shifted that from, oh, is this thing good enough to, oh, how could this thing be better? You know?
Right.
And it's that shift from, is this thing good enough to, can this thing be better, that actually allows you to then go down that path, you know? And that's really the power of positive thinking, you know, that we're talking about. It's not so much trying to say like, hey, everything's good, everything's fine, and, you know, then everything in your life magically becomes good and fine somehow. It's that when you think about things of, you know, from a perspective of, you know, where you're in lack to the point of, oh, where could this be? Where could this take me? Where could I go? You know, when you're looking at the road ahead and seeing where you could actually get to that path, that's positive thinking. You know, seeing your way around the obstacle or through it or over it is positive thinking.
Yes.
You know, not trying to say that, you know, you essentially like, oh, it's like, I'm okay, but then you're like burning in fire in the inside. Still, like, it's one thing if you actually are zenned out. Like I know people, and I myself have experienced, you know, the beautiful side of being present and being, you know, essentially content with your reality, you know, and being okay with whatever happens, you know, and so that's one side of things. But there's people that essentially, you know, kind of live that lifestyle of trying to, you know, embody this like power positive thinking, you know, the secret, you know, law of attraction type of mentality, but it's actually not working for them. You know, they're not actually happy inside. You know, they're not getting that what they really want out of life, and there is something else that they're really looking for. And so they're not actually leveraging the strategies to say, oh, how could I get here? And instead they're just essentially playing this game waiting for it to happen. And so, again, it's not about the strategy. It's not about the map. It's about how much that map actually, you know, can be useful for getting you to where you want to be.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, that's all good shit, man. I agree with all of that. And I feel the same way when it comes to, let's say, the law of attraction. That, like, I'm not saying like it's not good to have that thought of like, all right, cool, you know, you put that shit out in the universe, and then you manifest the fuck out of it. You're like, oh, $1 billion, $1 billion, $1 billion. Yeah. But like the missing thing that allows you to manifest that is the fact that you have to work toward that. You know what I mean? You have to put in the work for that kind of shit. Yeah. You know what I mean? You can manifest. You could like manifest that you want $1 million, and then let's say you win the lottery like when you're in your 80s. Yeah. You know what I mean? Or and that's if you're lucky. You know what I mean? Like you have like a 1 in 170 million chance of winning the lottery or something like that. Yeah. You have a greater chance of getting struck.
And then you take it with you. You
know what I mean? Like literally, or back to the state. Yeah. You know, if you didn't like put a trust or anything like that.
Or you always talk about like oh, do you actually even know what to do with that money when you have it in the first place?
100%. Yeah.
How congruent is that to you? You know, so the place that the law of attraction comes into play that's really beneficial is it can help you mentally prepare yourself for the achievement of that thing, because you're thinking about it's more so thinking about like, oh, like what would I do with this $1 million? You know what I mean? Do I like the experience of having $1 million? How could I have $1 million? $1 million even being like a possibility for you can then leverage itself towards finding a way to get there. But it's a tool, but it doesn't only, I guess, serve itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not something that's going to necessarily bring that thing to you directly. And even if it did, where are you left with that when you haven't done any other work?
Yeah, and not only that, like with like the fact of like, okay, cool, I have $1 million. What the hell am I going to do with it? Because most people don't know what they're going to do with it, and then they go bankrupt with it. You see it like not only with lottery winners, but you see with especially like athletes, unfortunately, who like they say like. It's an old study, but it said like back in 2009, it said like, NBA players lose 78% of any NBA players go bankrupt in 2 years after retirement. NFL player, no, that was for NFL players. NBA players was 5 years, now 60%. NFL players was 78% at 2 years. Yeah. Because, okay, cool, you have all this athletic ability, or you won the lottery, or whatever the case may be, but like now you have money, and so like you don't know what the fuck to do with it. You're like, all right, cool, I'm gonna buy houses and cars and all this other shit, but like you're not investing it, or maybe you don't trust the financial advisors, or you think that you know what's best for you and whatnot. I mean, like remember, like look at Mike Tyson, like back in the day, like old Mike Tyson, like not like currently successful and mentally in tune Mike Tyson, but like back then, and not saying like old Mike Tyson wasn't mentally in tune. Please don't punch me in the fucking face. But like,
I mean, well, Man Zero.
Yeah, but like, back then, he made like $400 million, and he was just buying all sorts of shit, like tigers and shit. I'm not saying like don't live your best life, but at least like put yourself in a position so that way you can make reoccurring money. You know what I mean? Like I grew up with like kids who just want to like get Jordans and all these other things, and like they'd spend their last dollar trying to get Jordans. And I always thought, like, okay, if you really want that stuff, why don't you put yourself in a position to like have a business or like have some kind of income stream that allows you to supplement getting Jordans
sustainably
without putting yourself at risk, for like not paying rent or your light bill. Hey, you look good in these Jordans, but you can't eat because all your food's fucking decaying in the fridge that you didn't pay for didn't pay the lights on because you need to get those shoes. Yeah, you know what I mean? So. Yeah. It's
the difference between owning something and letting it own you.
Yeah. Facts. Say that again. Say that again, please.
That's the difference between owning something and letting it own you.
Yeah, and like people let shit own them all the time, and like part of this conversation of like we've danced around, like it's just like you got to have critical thinking and being able to think outside of the box, and not even outside of the box really. It's just critical thinking. Like, hey, if I do X, this is what's going to potentially happen. If I buy these Jordans and do not pay my lights, these are the consequences of me not paying my lights. Yeah. At the very minimum, I can't watch TV. At the very maximum, my food's gonna rot, and most of all my appliances are not gonna work. Yeah. But,
and it's like it's one thing going into that idea, like understanding those things, and also like being strategic about it and being like, okay, like, can I navigate this in a way that's like sustainable for me, and like am I okay with the consequences and that the cards I'm left with essentially?
Yeah, versus like just blind regard for just like fuck it, I'm just gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And most times, like if you're really thinking about it that difficult, you're probably not going to make that decision in the first place. Yeah, but kind of going back to like that whole idea of like the cards, it's like you either play the hand you're dealt with, or you find another game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you find something else to do that doesn't involve, you know, the resources that you're currently looking at, you know?
Right. And like another thing that I want to like bring up earlier, but you brought it up like right now, is like the fact that I feel like speaking of like dealt hands, like you'll have a lot of people that feel that, oh yeah, I can't do this because this is the hand I was dealt and yada yada yada. But like the way I see life is that like everyone has a difficulty level that they were just born into. Like, okay, bam, I'm born now, and that was the sound of you being born.
Yeah, I like that.
And this is my race. These are my parents. This is their income. This is their decision-making skills. These are my siblings, if I have any. This is the location and environment that I am brought into, or my parents decide to reside in. These are the potential, like, you know, like all these different factors, and even ones that you can't even think about. This is the society that I live in. This is the kind of government that this society has. This is the like per capita income. Like no one. I mean, we're getting like deeper and deeper, but you get what I'm saying. Like, if you think of like the lady I brought up earlier from India, like she was living. Her life is on hard mode, like ungodly, insane mode. If this was a video game, it would be like
the hardest mode.
The hardest possible mode. She's a female in the lowest caste system in India.
Yeah.
And she made it to easy mode. Yeah. Versus like hard mode in this country, you know, which still sucks. You could be like living on Skid Row. You could be born on Skid Row. You're just a bummy ass kid. But I'm not saying that you can't make it. It's just going to be you just have to lay out your obstacles of what things are in life that are a detriment to you and how you can overcome them. All right, cool. Yeah. I'm homeless in America. And by no means am I trivializing homelessness in America. But what I'm trying to say though is that like the potential to overcome. There are people who Tyler Perry, $400 million or $500 million net worth. It can be done. It's just extremely difficult. It is simple, but it is not easy. It's by no means easy. So like being able to take like, all right, cool, I'm homeless. I have to be able to get a job. I need schooling. I need a good education somehow. I need to be able to understand and have enough self-awareness to know, like, who should be my friends, who can I trust, who can I not trust. Yeah. You know, here's are the dangers of things that prostitution's an issue, gangs, drugs, people that just don't like bums in general and will just like people would legit just like fight you and hurt you literally just because you're a bum. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like where am I going to get my food from, shelter, like a whole list of things that I'm probably hit to like the smallest thing. I've never been homeless, so I don't know like all the different things like that you would have to do to just even overcome that, just to get to the next stage. And all right, cool, I'm here, bam. All right, cool, next, here, bam. And like you have to be, and like one of the biggest keys to that is like you have to like understand, theme for yourself, self-awareness. You have to understand and be very receptive to who you are and receptive to what life is around, with the life around you. Like our eyes like collect like so much like gigabytes of data all the time, like consistently. Like you know what I mean? Consistently like learning at all times. So you have to be very like aware and like understand things that are happening, so that way you can get up to that level. Yeah, definitely. But versus like even somebody who's like a 1%er, like now we're getting to the complete opposite end. You're born, you're just out there born, and you're like, all right, cool, I'm part of a 1% family. We've had wealth for several generations, or a couple generations, or even like 2 generations, whatever the case may be. Like we're in the high millions, if not billions, and we're just fucking chilling. So now your issue is not resources, it's you being resourceful and overcoming complacency, because there's a lot of like 1% kids. I shouldn't say a lot because I don't know them personally, but there's a definite factor of complacency, having everything. You have all the options in the world. Yeah. Like you have like passports for days, probably multiple citizenships. You can go anywhere, do anything. You don't have to do a goddamn thing if you don't want to. Now, as far as I know, those families don't approve of that, depending on the family. Everyone's different, of course, but like they typically would want you to work or do something. Yeah. But like what I'm saying is like it's not easy. Complacency in itself, procrastination, and laziness are like demons that you have to like be able to get off your back. The same way, greed or any other thing would be as well. So it's just like it's every single part of life has some kind of difficulty level. And of course, there's going to be on very easy, but they have to be aware that they are complacent.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I was gonna say like even the way you just explained that entire like thing is like a version of like using a different map, right? Like what if the world was a video game, right?
Yeah.
And you had kind of these different modes that you came into the world with. And like a good example for me is like there's the video game Dark Souls.
Yeah.
And like in Dark Souls, there's like these different classes you can start out with, and one of them is called Deprived. And so like the Deprived literally like starts off with like no like equipment, like everyone else has like, you know, like everything, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They each have kind of these unique things that they're given. This one just like literally you're naked, you know what I mean? Like you're like naked and you have like a club, you know what I mean? And like that's how you start. But what's interesting is that like a lot of like people that get really good at the game actually start there, not to give themselves a disadvantage, actually to give themselves an advantage, because what it allows you to do is actually build the character up the way that you want them to be, from a more ideal perspective. Whereas when you start somewhere where you have everything, it's actually a lot more difficult to, you know, build up to that place that you actually want to be, because you've already been given kind of a framework for how you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
This kind of goes back into having these beliefs and these ideas. Like if you were given all these resources, you know what I mean, you might have a framework for life that doesn't allow you to actually become, you know, who you want to be beyond those resources. And that's not so much that I'm saying that you can't actually do that, but more so that your mindset, your barrier that you're creating for yourself is that you actually have to live within, you know, the lifestyle that you've been handed.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
now I have to, you know, essentially do nothing and never work a day in my life. And that could be very isolating. You know what I mean? Like me and you are here, you know, talking to each other, right?
Yeah.
But like, if I was born into a $1 billion family, I probably would never meet you.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, yeah.
I probably would not even be trying to create what I'm trying to create, because it might not make sense to me. I wouldn't have to have, you know, overcame some of the struggles that I've overcome. I wouldn't have the foundational, you know, idea of maybe giving people information that helps take them to another place in life that I think is going to benefit them.
Yeah, and not only that, but why would you care? Like, why? Who?
Yeah.
Like, why? Like, you're like, I don't need to do anything. Like, why? Why should I care?
Yeah,
like,
you might not even understand that like other people have those problems or what those problems actually feel like.
Yeah.
So you might be lacking empathy, which could lead to, you know, lack of friendship. You know, it's like that's why, you know, you see a lot of these people that have money and are hated by the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you lose, you know, some context of what it's like to just be like an everyday person, you know, and then people don't resonate with you, they can't connect with you, you can't connect with them, you know. So, and it's not to say that that's actually what happens when you have money. It's just an example of what could happen if you were born into that situation, and that it's not about what situation you're born into. Each one can have their own struggles. Money definitely makes things easier because you have the resources that you need to, you know, but it's like Jim Carrey said, I wish everyone had, you know, $1 million so they could realize that it wasn't, you know, the biggest problem in their life, or it wasn't, you know,
100%.
Yeah.
No, dude, exactly. And like that's perfect, because like a lot of people like feel like money is going to be the end all be all. Granted, a lot of people's issues, including myself, would be like, you know, like say like financial things that you have to do. Like even as an entrepreneur, you're always going to need money to like build and grow and stuff like that, which is like what I'm, you know, like with all of us are having to deal with that.
Yeah.
But like even as just like an individual, however, like you're going to quickly find out that like, all right, cool, I have like all the money in the world, or like I won the lottery, or this or that, and then like money didn't equal happiness, dog. It's connections, it's relationships, and that's like one of the biggest things that people seem to forget or not even think about or conceptualize, because they think that, oh, okay, I won the lottery, and like you have all these people coming over, and that's not love. That's just like people just like, oh, this motherfucker has money, and I'm gonna try and get something out of him, or like something free out of him. Like you have to like be able to like have those relationships before you achieve that, or like grow up with like other entrepreneurs as well. Like I'm not saying like to like ditch your old friends or anything like that. I'm just saying like to like, you know, like if you can't help them get to that level, find other people who are at that level, so you always have like people in different circles that you could do things with and understand, like build true relationships and true connections, not just like, hey, you know, I got a bunch of money, let's go on my private jet to like fucking wherever, or whatever the case may be, because they're gonna be like, all right, fine, fuck it, yeah, why not? I mean, like, you're paying for it.
Plus, like this is another reason why being like financially savvy is important. You know, if you if you're born into money, you might not actually understand like a lot of things around that money and like things that actually could protect that money. And so there could be something where that money ends up slipping away from you.
Yeah.
You know, before you know it, and you're not even aware of it happening. You're not aware that it could happen, and suddenly it's gone. And now all of your relationships have been built on the premise of, hey, we both have money. You know what I mean? And let's go do something ridiculous.
And you don't know like my inner who I am. You don't know like anything. You know the information that I allow you to know as a human being. You don't like.
Well, then there's no trust as far as me being able to like rely on that person.
100 exactly, and that's why it comes back down to connections. It comes back down to relationships and understanding. Like, cool, yeah, we both have money, but like, who are you, Lorenzo? What do you like to do?
Yeah.
Or you like to water ski? I've never been water skiing. Let's go do that. Bam, bonding, friendship. Hopefully, things of that nature. Moving on. Here are my friends. Actual genuine conversations, not like superficial bullshit or anything like that, and just like being able to go off into the world. And like, keep in mind, like, you're not gonna have like millions of friends. Like, no one has like that many friends. It's not like having a true cabal of friends, Kabbalion of friends, having a true like your inner circle, your cabinet of friends. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it's all about.
Your dream hive.
Your dream hive that you can have. But yeah, like that's what it's like. That's what I feel like when people say like, oh, money's not everything. Money doesn't bring happiness. Money to me, money does not bring happiness. Money is a tool. Money is an instrument that allows you to do other things. People think of money as like, oh, it's the end all be all. I think of money as gas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's energy.
It's an energy source that allows you to, if you like, life is like the human construct of the way that we live life now.
Yeah, currently.
Like in this day and age, money. You need money to be able to do things.
Yeah.
You don't see like your car cannot run without gas. You cannot buy things without money. That's it. And it could be, but unlike gas, or maybe just like gas, if you're an oil company, you'd be able to leverage that resource to how you want, you know?
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, I will give you X amount of money so that way you could build your dream, like you brought up earlier, venture capitalism or angel investing or anything like that, to be able to do this, but I want a piece of this. Or I'll be able to help you, do this or that, but I want this in return and whatnot, and things of that nature.
Yeah, and that's why the self-awareness is more important than the money, is because even if you have the money, it comes back down to what are you doing with it? Because all you're saying is that you have gas, you have energy. Where are you driving your car?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
What car are you driving? You know what I mean? Like, what's your destination? Where are you trying to go? Why are you trying to go there?
Yeah, exactly.
And so a lot of people, when they do have money, the reason why they can blow it so fast and they can get rid of it so quickly is because they don't actually even know what they were supposed to spend that money on. They didn't have a concept of, I want money because this. Yeah. Because I'm trying to achieve this. They just knew that they wanted money and they needed money to survive, essentially. And then it became this constant accumulation of money. There's people that have well beyond their means and money and still feel like it's not enough, but they're not happy. They're not happy with like their lifestyle. They're not happy with what they're doing to get that money. Yeah. And it's like, well, why are you still trying to get money? And it's because, again, there's been this kind of program of, oh, I must get more money. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh.
Like a drone.
But it's like they've never understood why. They've never understood what it was for and what they're trying to do with it. So they never like understood how money can actually get them to happiness. Money doesn't buy happiness. It can be a tool you can leverage to get you to a place where you are happy. Yes. It can be a resource on your path to happiness. But it doesn't get you happiness. It doesn't buy you happiness. It's something that can be a tool, a resource, a fuel towards your path of happiness.
Yes, and that's what I feel like a lot of people have to understand. Like, just like, don't look at money as like this conduit of euphoria. Look at it as just like this is a instrument to allow me to propel myself from A to Z, not even B, A to Z, to be able to just like get whatever you're trying to get out of life, because that's just how life is. Like, that's like if you want to be able to do things, you could try to do it without money, or you could do it with money. Yeah. Money may not be able to bring happiness, but poverty can't buy you shit.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
No, for sure.
you know what I mean? And like, so like, it's very important to like understand like what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
In that regard.
Yeah.
With whatever you're trying to do in life.
Yeah, that's the other side. You know, be aware of if you have a negative relationship with money too. You know, because one of the reasons that people never, you know, work to achieve certain things is because they have a belief about money that it will lead them somewhere negative.
Yes.
You know, and so when they do that, then they never actually leverage that opportunity to take them where they really want to go. And then they're also unhappy because they've created this idea that, oh, money can't, you know, buy happiness. But not only that, you know, if I have money, then it equals, you know, unhappiness, you know,
yes.
that it equals sadness or depression or anxiety or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And so then they essentially are also dissatisfied with their current lifestyle because in order to get to where they want to go, they actually do need money. They actually need money to take them to that next place. But their model of the world is what's preventing them from getting there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All facts, in my opinion.
All facts.
And like, you know, people will disagree. I would find it hard for you to find a reason why you would disagree, but like there's going to be people that disagree with that, which is fine. It's always going to be a healthy conversation in that regard. Want to pivot to another thing real fast, which is still in the realm of everything that we're talking about, but for people that may be younger listening to this, or what would you feel are like the 5 things? Actually, I feel like there should be like 30 plus things, but what would you say are 5 essential things that somebody should be learning right now while they're in middle school, high school, or even college and whatnot? Like, what are 5 things, whether it be taxes or emotional intelligence or finances, whatever it is? Please go ahead. 5 things.
Emotional intelligence for sure. Like emotions, you know, just like how we were saying that money is a fuel that will get you to where you want to go in life. Emotions are like the fuel for like how we even do that. You know, like how we even make those decisions. They are the fuel of our day-to-day life. So developing emotional intelligence is hugely important. I would definitely put that as one of the top priorities. Another thing would be understanding, I guess you could say, like philosophy or logic, understanding like the way you think and understanding, you know, kind of how to, how to understand your own thoughts essentially, and whether things are irrational or reasonable, or, you know, kind of the framework of those ideas. It would definitely be important. And that could be philosophy, it could be personal development. There's a lot of things kind of under that, but just kind of understanding, you know, really your thoughts. Third thing would be, you know, health. Obviously, like you only have, you know, this life, you know, this body, you know, regardless of what you know, believe happens like after death, you know, and who we really are, like at maybe like a soul level or something like that. But, But, you know, within the context of this life, you know, you have this body. This is your vessel. This is the way that you're going to navigate the world. This is your car, essentially.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
You know, and so, you know, if you're, you know, not aware of how to maintain your car properly, it's going to break down. You know what I mean? And it's like, you know, a car can break down very quickly if it's not well maintained. So can a body.
Absolutely.
You know, so you think you're going to, you know, live, you know, 100 years, you know what I mean? But, you know, people experience diseases and all kinds of issues at very young ages. And a lot of it has to do with the lack of understanding of health. And, you know, this gets into a lot of different areas, you know, understanding, you know, lifestyle health in particular, because that's something that's constant. You know, medical developments are going to change, you know, but your behaviors are something that you live with every single day. And that's going to be the main thing that I would really want people to understand, is how their behaviors, you know, their day-to-day decisions affect their health, and how that causes, you know, chronic disease, and that, you know, you can't really just escape from those problems by taking, you know, a pill or injecting yourself with something, because you're going to be living a lifestyle that creates those same issues over and over and over again, and the body cannot, you know, it's like you can only do so much maintenance on a car, you know, same thing. So that'd be a very important thing. For, I would say, relationships, you know, and this kind of factors into emotional intelligence. You know, it could also just be understanding, like, you know, sociology and kind of more about how people interact and what that means, so understanding, relationships and social dynamics, and understanding what's happening with the people around you is extremely important, because one, you need to learn how to develop those relationships, and two, you need to understand what those relationships mean, you know what I mean? And what that means for you and how to leverage that. And then I would say, the fifth thing that I would encourage everyone to, really get into is essentially an understanding of kind of more the external things around you, like business and finance. What is the system of the world around you, and how can you leverage, these tools in order to propel you forward, right? So understanding things like business and finance and marketing and sales, it goes beyond just entrepreneurship. This goes to more understanding the world around you, right? Because everything that we have around us is fueled by, someone's, business, right? The only reason I have these microphones is because I purchased them. The only reason that we're at this table is because someone purchased it.
Right.
And the entire world around you is created essentially by, money in the modern day, at least here in America, what I mean? In a lot of other countries too. But it's an extremely important thing to do. And even those principles, even if you weren't using the current economic system, even if you were in a bartering society, a lot of the principles and values that you get out of understanding, sales and economics and marketing kind of circulate back into just human behavior in general. And really it becomes more of an understanding of our psychology and kind of how energy flows, so it's even if you took money and you replaced it with something else like love, right? It's how do you exchange love with other people? How do you manage love? How do you, you know what I mean? There's different things like that. How do you attain more love? Giving value to someone, and that giving them love and them giving you back, value in exchange for that, and you getting love back. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a lot of these core understandings of business and marketing and sales and economics come into play in so many other areas of life. That I'd say it's an extremely important thing for people to understand, so they understand the world around them, even if they don't want to have their own business or do anything around finance or marketing or sales.
Oh yeah. Is there anything that you want to let people know in terms of where people could find you, or where people can see your content or anything like that, Lorenzo?
Yeah. Right now, I'm kind of still in the middle of launching these platforms, but as far as the website, you will be able to find me at lorenzofields.com. Website's still under design right now, but you will be able to find me there. And pretty much lifehackers.io is going to be another place where you can find more of the information that I'm trying to get out there, and kind of more of what I'm trying to provide back to the world.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, Lorenzo Fields on social media.
Yeah, so we're going to have all of his stuff in the description. You can definitely check that out. Lorenzo, I'd like to thank you for being on the very first Never 9 to 5 Again podcast. I don't even know if this will be called that. I definitely have a site called that, so definitely check that out. Lorenzo, always a pleasure. I don't know how I'm going to end this. This video is not sponsored by anyone because I don't have dick yet, anything, so this is done.
Have a good one.